After the American Civil War, the South is going to fight its own ideological war, and many Southerners are going to find comfort in the idea of the lost cause. And it's this idea of nostalgia for the mythic Old South, the idea of giant plantations with the giant white columns and wealth from cotton plantations that had been produced by enslaved blacks. However, some prominent Southerners really looked to the future. They realized that the war was over and they saw small farms that are going to be owned by whites and blacks, and they saw a growing industrial sector. And one person in particular really saw a new South being born, and this individual was Henry Woodfin Grady, and he was the editor of the newspaper, the Atlanta Constitution. And he said the Old South was dead, but a new South of union and freedom was growing every hour of every day. And he claimed the New South was becoming a perfect democracy. And many Southerners are going to agree that the South lost the war and they needed to really move on, and they needed to follow by example of the North and develop a strong industrial sector to go with their farming industry. Southerners had learned their lesson from the Civil War that it was important for them to not just have farming, but have factories in the South. If the South did have factories during the war, they would have had enough products and goods to help them possibly even win the war. But because most of the manufacturing was taking place in the northern states, the South was not able to get items like different types of clothing and weapons during the war that they needed. So they've learned their lesson, we'll say, and they're going to become industrialized, or try to at least. And so new industry is going to move into the South. And one of the major industries that's going to move into the southern states is the textile industry. And so we're going to see cotton mills grow from 161 mills in 1880 to over 400 by the time 1900 rolls around. By 1900, the South is going to pass New England as the largest cotton producer in the nation. And prior to this time period, New England was known for their cotton mills. The one thing about the textile industry in the South is that most of the workers, about 70%, are going to be under the age of 21, and many were under the age of 14. And these children workers are going to work dawn to dusk for 50 cents per day. So many children within the South are not going to be going to school. They're not going to be becoming educated. Their families need them to be working to help support them at the time. Another industry that's going to see a huge boom is the coal industry. So coal production in 1875 was approximately 5 million tons a year. By the time 1900 rolls around, it's going to be 40 million tons a year. And a lot of this had to do, or the increase had to do with the fact that industry throughout the country was booming. Coal was being used for electricity and power within factories. And within homes, and so it was a commodity that was needed. Another industry that will see an increase in the South is lumber production, and this is because of the increase for the need of lumber for housing. The United States is seeing a large increase in population at this time, especially because of immigration, and so the lumber was needed. Despite the development of mills and factories in the South in 1900, the South is going to remain the least industrial, least urban, least educated, and least prosperous region in the entire nation. After the Civil War, there's going to be very few banks throughout the South, so people had to operate with little to no cash, and many rural areas are going to adopt the barter system. A merchant would provide food, clothing, seed, fertilizer, and other items to poor Southern farmers on credit or in exchange for a share of their crops when they harvested. And this became known as the crop lien system. And this was very important for farmers because if they couldn't afford the goods that they needed to farm, it allowed them to still get them so that they could survive and still have food for their families.